Hi, my name is Rachel and welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. This is the first actual garden tour in a while, but I'm going to call this week 16 just because it's going to keep everything in the right order. So if you're going through this playlist, you know that this is the next one in the series of garden tours. Since the last time you guys saw the garden, a lot has changed. We are in the midst of everything kind of coming down to a close for the summer, and things are getting ready to ramp up for the fall. So a lot of stuff you'll see in the garden is on its last legs, and in a week or two I'm going to be planting all of my fall transplants. We have about a month until the estimated first frost date in this area, so there's about another month until all of this is brown and crispy. But for the time being, all of it looks pretty great, if I'm being honest. Starting where we usually start, you'll notice that all of these sunflowers are gone. They died and I pulled them out. But the tomatoes and the pole beans on this side are still going strong. I am still getting baby beans and a lot of edible sized beans, and so many that a lot of them are getting big enough to not even be edible anymore. Who could have guessed? Rachel overwhelmed with green beans once again. But the tomatoes are not producing at the scale that they were. I'm still obviously getting tomatoes. And what's nice is actually the pest pressure has gone down. So it's still pretty warm out, but the life cycle of a lot of the summer pests is coming to an end, and so my tomatoes are not getting eaten the second they start turning even a little bit red, which is really nice because then I can leave them on the vine a little longer, let them get a little sweeter, and it's less worry for me, and it's really nice. However, the plants are producing a little bit less than they were. And I think that's mostly just because I haven't been taking very good care of them. If you look closely at this, you can see that the plants have grown up the trellis and are now falling back down. And I've stopped doing stuff like pruning off suckers. I'm mostly just trying to pin up plants so that they're not on the ground. And you can see there's a lot of unhappy leaves in here. And I've kind of stopped coming through and pruning those off because I know in a month everything is going to be dead anyway. Especially down here, you can kind of see everything looks a little sad, and yet there are all of these purple beans. The plant they're on doesn't even look like it should be alive, and yet here they are. If we take a look at the pepper patch behind the tomatoes, it's actually looking pretty good. We are still in between flushes of peppers, but they are going to be coming in force soon. There are a lot of almost full-sized green peppers on these plants, and they're actually looking quite a bit better than they were in the middle of the summer. But if you don't know, peppers will go through what is called flushes. And what that means is that they grow, they put on a lot of flowers and fruit, and then once you pull all of that fruit, the plant is going to take some time to grow up some more and then put on more flowers and then fruit. And each cycle of that is called a flush of fruit. And so when you're in between, it can feel like you have a lot of production and then suddenly you don't have much production, but you know that as you see all those flowers coming onto that plant, that you are about to have a lot more production. And usually the second flush will be bigger than the first because the plant is already big and established, and all it's done is grown bigger before putting on more flowers. So these plants had looked a little sickly from stuff like this near the beginning of the summer, and I thought maybe they would survive for a little while and maybe they would all die off. And they seem to have overcome it, which is really nice. And I haven't noticed but one plant actually really die from whatever that was. So that's been really nice. And I'm just noticing how much this Jigsaw Pepper has taken over. Like, oh my goodness, this is practically a bush now. And it's still putting on cute little fruits. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to go through all of these fresh, so they're being saved to make a nice dried pepper powder. My nasturtiums are kind of just now coming into their fullness. These are such pretty plants. If you haven't heard me say it before, they are edible. They're supposed to taste kind of peppery. They go well in salads. I mostly grow them because I think they're pretty, and I know they are edible if I really wanted to. I think my healthiest pepper plant out here right now is my Tabasco plant, and it is the most upright plant as well that I have. It's just been doing really great, putting on a whole heck of a lot of peppers, and I have pulled a lot of these already, and you can see there's still quite a few more to come. Maybe the deadest part of this garden right now is the bean patch that I am standing in, that you probably can't see because it's all dead. I came through and I actually missed pulling all of the dried beans off at the right time, which was very unfortunate. What happened was the beans dried out and I got very busy right before I left town and I wasn't able to pull them. And while I was out of town, there was a lot of rain, and these dried bean pods subsequently molded, and it was very sad. And you know, sometimes these things happen. I'm just lucky that I'm not relying on these for sustenance. And next year I can maybe plan a little better and think about how it is imperative to get these dried pods off the plants before they mold. But because I missed some of them, interestingly, they have started sprouting everywhere, and they're not going to survive very long. Definitely not long enough to produce. But it is very interesting, and I have no reason to pull them out. They will just die eventually. My eggplants are also looking kind of rough, but not in a they're dying kind of way, in a they're falling over because they're so large kind of way. I was thinking they wouldn't need any support, and they did not until I went away, and then I come back and they're like laying over, but still fine, to be honest. And you can see they are in the middle of another flush of fruit, so I will be having even more eggplants probably before the frost, which is really, really neat. And I still stand by the spacing I had on these plants. I think it was good. If they're only just now getting too big right here at the very end, I think that that's fine. My zinnias are still blooming and still looking gorgeous everywhere in the garden. Now, my noodle bean trellis is not as impressive as it once was, but man, it's still very impressive for this late in the season, I must say. And it is still very productive. So I thought that I was going to let all of them go to seed, and then I was going to pull them off and they would be done. But these plants keep producing. I've still been pulling edible sized noodle beans off of them like every day since I got back from my trip. And it's still almost too much for me to eat by myself, in addition to the ones that I'm not picking to eat and I'm letting go to seed. So just wow on these. I apparently planted the right amount because it doesn't look like they choked any of themselves out. And they are obviously really well suited to this climate because they just keep going. Right now we have a spider friend in here. You probably can't see the web, but it's big and it's right here. The spider is not currently in the middle of it, but this trellis has been host to a lot of spider friends over the season. And now that it's cooling off, it's really nice to stand in and just experience the shade and the surrounding of all these cute little vines. And I especially love the way they've been hanging off the front and kind of twisting into each other and hanging down their fruit. It's just been so lovely. And we're going to duck under the spider web and look at this other trellis. So this is the old Cucumber Trellis with the pretty wind chime, and this has pole beans on it. I think these are Kentucky pole beans, and I planted these thinking that all of my other green bean sources would be dying out right about now. And you can see this is almost getting to the point where it is old enough to flower. So in a couple of weeks, I will be harvesting green beans from this, and I was thinking I would be harvesting from this and nothing else, but we will see if that prediction is actually true and whether or not I have screwed myself and given myself even more green beans to deal with that I don't need. But interestingly, something has definitely been chewing on these leaves, and I haven't done anything about that, but as you can see, the plants have been growing fast enough to keep up with that. You can see they're already up to here. So I haven't had to deal with that. The plants have just kind of outgrown the pest pressure, which is really nice to see. And the bees are still visiting all of these zinnias that are still blooming. I am amazed, like this flower just blooms all freaking summer, and it has been gorgeous all summer. I've pulled from these flowers for bouquets like a few times now, and you can't really tell. They just keep splitting and keep growing. This is definitely the messiest part of the garden though. The tomato patch here is overgrown, and all of the tomatoes are laying on the ground now. And I'm thinking I will end up coming through and picking another batch of green tomatoes, which honestly is not that bad. My dad actually seems to prefer my green tomato salsa over my regular, so that's kind of a win. Still a very beautiful garden, even as it's falling apart slowly. And you may have seen it in the background of some of these shots, but I have something new to show you. Ta-da! It is a new raised bed, and it is almost ready to be planted. I have been working on this over the past few weeks just because I have to do things here and there where I have time. But don't worry, there's a whole video that I'm working on how I filled this raised bed, why I did what I did, and there will be a video of me planting it whenever it is ready. Now, this is probably the last time you guys are going to see this next area, because I am scheduled to move into my actual house this week. So this very overgrown area with all of my potted plants is going to get moved, and I'm going to have to clean up all of the weeds that I have let grow up around it while it's been here. Most of the reason for that is because these plants put down roots through the bottom of their pots, and because they did that, that meant they were fine and I didn't have to water them. And so now I'm gonna have to move them and tear up half of their roots, and they're gonna need a lot more water. But, you know, that's how it goes. But that's why I haven't been moving them to mow around them. And this section has just kind of gone wild. This is the Malabar Spinach. This is the pot that it's living in. And this is where it has decided it wants to live. It's very beautiful. It would have been better on a trellis. I didn't really plan to have it, but I couldn't kill it either, so that's why it's here. And its little berries are starting to turn. They get really dark colored. The berries aren't really edible, but the leaves are. And they're supposed to be kind of like an okra textured spinach with that mucusy feel to them. I don't like them very much, but I do think it is very pretty. These peppers are also coming into another flush back here. We have this Tabasco pepper and my cayenne bush, which is putting on a whole new set of fruit. And my Serrano plant back here actually is the only plant that doesn't look so great. And I'll be honest, I don't know what happened. Everybody around him is fine. Nothing touched him. This plant just up and decided he was done and died. I don't think it's a water issue because he's gotten just as much water as this guy. And I don't think anybody sprayed any pesticides on him, or herbicides, I mean. Yeah, I don't know. There's no evidence of pest damage. The leaves just curled up and yellowed and started dying. So I'm gonna have to pull all of these peppers off. Like right now they're still alive and they're fine, so I have a couple more days maybe. And they might ripen just a little bit more, but I think most of these aren't going to be very spicy because they haven't had the time to mature on the plant. But like I was saying, all the rest of these plants are doing fine. They're still existing beautifully, especially the fish pepper. Like, just, I don't get tired of these cute little stripy peppers and their beautiful white leaves. I've had a couple of these peppers come out just pure white, which is really interesting. Yeah, all of these look great. I'm gonna be moving my stevia into the raised bed soon whenever it's ready. And my little lavender plant, which I planted from seed at the beginning of spring and is now only this big, but to be fair, I have done nothing to help him along other than leave him outside where he can achieve water and sunlight. So if you remember, I mentioned that everything on my porch died because of neglect, and I have something interesting to show you. So first of all, this tomato has decided that he's gonna do a last-ditch effort to put on some fruit. There's no reason this tomato should be alive, if I'm being honest. I thought that it was as dead as this one. And yet here it is, trying to put on fruit. Additionally, things that have come back, my thyme plant, you can see the green coming in. This one has revived itself. My mint plant has also revived itself. And I think even my catnip plant is coming back. The oregano seems to still be dead. This lavender plant seems to be dead. And my rosemary plant is alive, but only just. We'll see how it does. Currently out here, I also have my seedlings. These are brassica seedlings, and they look sad, if I'm being honest. I don't know if they're gonna survive being transplanted in a week or so. They're not very big, and I don't know why they aren't very happy. Yeah, I did not have my traditional seed starting setup in this house, and so I think that might be part of it. They probably didn't get as much light as they needed. They definitely got about as much water as they needed, but while I was gone, they ended up looking a little sadder when I got back, and I don't think that that is the fault of the person taking care of them, because I gave clear instructions and those instructions were followed. There's just like not the ability to react to seeing them starting to look sad. And honestly, if I had been there, I don't know what I would have done other than try and make sure they had water and sunlight. And that's part of why they're out here now. I am trying to harden them off a little bit to get them ready to go outside full time. I also have these seedlings that I picked up from a plant sale at the botanical gardens. Well, some of them. Some of these are from the store because I thought that my herbs had died, and I know I didn't have sage here since my last place, so I thought I'd pick up more sage and more oregano, and this is just easier than growing them from seed. Plus, these are plants that, as we have seen, will come back over and over, so it's not like paying for an annual that would have been a one-season plant. But I did get Brussels sprouts from the plant sale, and I also got a few cauliflower, because you can see this seedling versus these seedlings. You know, one of these looks like it's gonna live, and one of these is very iffy. And that is the garden tour. As I said, things will be changing a bit over the next few weeks. And specifically, everything is getting moved to the new house, which will be really nice. And the raised bed is getting planted. And so things are gonna change a lot. And I'm very excited for it. I'm excited to have the space to actually have a big fall garden, which I haven't had in the past. And I am sure that there are a lot of mistakes I'm gonna make along the way. So this year is a big learning curve year for me in terms of the fall garden. But all that being said, check back next Wednesday for another garden tour. And until then, I wish you happy gardening.